Revenge with Karen.
I knew I was invisible the day Ivy introduced me as her assistant, who does some language stuff, to the CFO of Takahashi International. I had personally negotiated their entry into the US market 6 years ago, spent 3 sleepless months working through compliance with their legal team, and even shared warm sake with their chairman's wife at her birthday dinner in Osaka. But to Ivy, the founder's daughter turned accidental CEO, it was little more than a walking Google Translate with a decent pantsuit. I just smiled, nodded politely, and excused myself before I said something unladylike in 2 languages. 15 years. 15 years of building this company's reputation overseas, earning the respect of partners who valued honor over hype, strategy over slogans. While Ivy was running brand sprints with Pinterest mood boards and glittery interns, it was the one rewriting cross-border contracts at 3 a.m. because Tokyo operates while the rest of us sleep. When our Korean investors had cold feet, I flew to Seoul and brought them back. When the Berlin office lost its VP, I held it together remotely until we found a replacement. No recognition, no LinkedIn posts, just work, just quiet results. I never wanted the spotlight. I just wanted respect. And for a while, that was enough, till the founder retired. That's when Ivy took over, not because she earned it, but because Daddy thought it's time she learned the ropes. She didn't learn the ropes. She used them to tie bows on bad ideas and strangle the departments she didn't understand. Strategy, compliance, international relations, suddenly all of it was shoved into one global ops department under her thumb, which she rebranded as Worldly Ventures. I wish I were kidding. She wore sunglasses indoors and pitched meetings as synergy rituals. I kept my head down. I had a job to do, and now I had one last shot to do it right. The Takahashi deal, $180 million in foreign investment, a delegation flying in from Tokyo to finalize the agreement. This was the kind of deal that could secure the company's future and mine along with it. I'd nurtured this relationship for years. Kento Takahashi himself was attending. He didn't travel for just anything. He once skipped his own niece's wedding because the host didn't bow properly. That's the level we're talking about, and I knew if we did this right, it would be legacy-defining. But Ivy, she declared she would be leading the meeting. She said it during the prep call with all department heads, clapping her hands like we were auditioning for Shark Tank. Amanda will be here for cultural support, she chirped, but I'll be running point. Almost swallowed my tongue. Cultural support. What the hell did she think this was, a food truck festival? I stayed quiet, but I started preparing, just in case, because Ivy had already renamed the deal Folder Project Wasabi and was planning to open the meeting with a fun haiku. I found this out when her assistant forwarded me her slides, 3 of which had anime gifs and one that said kawaii investment energy. I nearly called in sick out of second-hand embarrassment. But I didn't, because if this was going to crash, I needed to be there to soften the fall or witness the explosion. Maybe both. And if you're the kind of person who lives for stories where the person who actually knows what they're doing finally gets their due, then maybe tap that subscribe button and like the story. 95% of folks don't, but it really helps us keep the engine running. And trust me, this one's worth staying for. Back to Ivy, who had never spoken a full sentence of Japanese in her life and once called miso soup that rice water with tofu chunks, was now convinced she could finesse a formal Japanese delegation with charisma and Canva slides. She even ordered custom-branded fans with our logo printed on them. Except the translation read, "Great wind, blow happy for all company rice." I corrected it in time. Barely. I packed my notes, viewed the talking points, rehearsed respectful phrasing and ceremonial greetings. I even had the honor tokens wrapped and ready for the guests, small handmade calligraphy scrolls I'd commissioned from a Tokyo artisan, personalized with each executive's name. Ivy brought a tray of matcha Kit Kats. We were not the same, and soon the room would know it. The morning of the final prep session, Ivy strutted into the executive boardroom like she was headlining a TED talk. Iced latte in one hand and a leather folio in the other like it contained state secrets. "Okay, team," she beamed, clapping her acrylics. "Let's synergize this experience before our friends from the East arrive." She actually said that, out loud, in front of the senior trade advisor, the legal rep from Tokyo, and Mr. Hayashi, the same man who once told me with no irony that American informality gave him digestive issues. I opened my mouth to speak. Ivy was already steamrolling. Amanda, be a dear and set up the refreshments table. They love that chrysanthemum tea, right? I had some shipped in. Oh, and make sure the name placards are aligned. Aesthetic symmetry is huge in Japan. There it was. The knife between the ribs, twisted with a faux-friendly smile. I glanced at the wall-mounted screen where the presentation slides were already being cued. None of them had my speaking points. None of them had the cultural framing I'd spent weeks perfecting. Just graphs, stock photos of cherry blossoms, and a slide titled Trust, the sushi of business. Ivy, I said evenly, keeping my voice controlled, I think I should review the introductory remarks. There are certain formalities you're just support. She cut in, not even looking up from her iPad. This meeting needs a voice, not a translation. And I don't want to confuse them with too many speakers. Support, like a printer, like a paperweight. There was a tight silence in the room. One of the junior analysts, James, poor thing, stopped typing mid-keystroke. Ivy's tone had landed with a slap, even if half the room was too stunned to show it. I took a slow breath. Understood, I said, but I should remind you the chairman prefers meetings to open with the formal welcome phrase, delivered in Japanese. Ivy rolled her eyes. We ran it through Google Translate. Sounded fine. I'll just read it phonetically. She held up a note card scrawled with phonetic gibberish. I squinted at it. She'd written Konnichiwa next to Dear Honored Investor Friends. I think I aged a year on the spot. Don't make this personal, Amanda, she added sharply, sensing my resistance. I'm the CEO now. I get to set the tone. My hands went cold. 15 years of fluency, of building trust and partnership, of honoring ritual and precision, dismissed because Ivy wanted to perform a power play. She didn't care about the outcome. She just needed to be the star. I stepped back, literally. I moved to the side wall where the support staff usually stood. No one said a word, not HR, not the operations director. They all just stared at their hands like the table had become the most fascinating thing in the universe. Except Mr. Hayashi. His eyes found mine. He didn't blink, didn't frown. But I saw it. Flicker of something. Curiosity, pity, perhaps recognition. He turned back to his tea, and Ivy launched into rehearsal mode, mispronouncing Amot Nashi like it was a brand of deodorant. The delegation was arriving in less than 24 hours. I still had time. Not to save Ivy, not even to salvage the deal, but to make damn sure that when the moment came, no one in that room mistook me for background noise again. Not the board, not Ivy, not even me. Boardroom had never felt colder. Not in temperature, but in silence, the kind of stiff, ceremonial hush that descends when people who actually matter enter a room. The Japanese delegation moved like water, calm, intentional, unshakable. Even their nods carried weight. They wore charcoal suits so precise, it felt disrespectful to breathe near them. At their center, Kento Takahashi, stoic, sharp-eyed, and still as stone, offered a short bow. Not too low, not too curt, just enough to show he was watching. I bowed in return from my seat at the far end of the room, the wrong end, the one closest to the door where support staff usually sits with laptops and spare dongles. I had no laptop, no dongles, just a pen, a notepad, and the fading remnants of dignity. Ivy stepped forward like she was introducing a boy band. Konnichiwa, she blurted, her voice far too loud. Welcome to our, exciting moment of cross-cultural fusion. I closed my eyes. Let's start by honoring your traditions, she said, fumbling with a remote as the screen behind her flickered to life. On it, an image of cherry blossoms morphed into a handshake graphic that looked like it was pulled from clip art hell. This, to us, is not just a deal. It's a haiku of trust. She beamed like she'd just reinvented diplomacy. First, I'd like to thank Chairman Takahashi. Takahashi didn't flinch, but a younger delegate blinked, slow and pained. Ivy didn't stop, and as we say in America, let's get this show on the road. No one smiled. She clicked to the next slide, which read Sushi and Synergy. Still, no one smiled. I kept my face still, hands clasped on my lap like they'd been carved there. And then it happened. As Ivy launched into a fumbled anecdote about her college semester in Kyoto, she suddenly turned, gestured to me with a lazy wave, and said, I'm leading this meeting. Amanda, be a dear and fetch coffee for our guests, will you? The room tilted. It was not the words. It was the way she said them. Like I was a waitress who'd gotten lost on the way to the kitchen. Like I didn't speak 6 languages or hold a master's in international relations or personally host the Takahashi delegation's last 4 U.S. site visits. Something in me cracked, quietly, like a pearl necklace slipping its string. I didn't move at first, just stared at the notepad in front of me. The lines looked like prison bars. Then I stood. Ivy, already turning back to her slides, didn't notice. But Mr. Takahashi did. His eyes followed me, curious, measuring. I walked slowly past Ivy, past the table, past the tray of untouched chrysanthemum tea Ivy had ordered and never bothered to brew. My heels tapped evenly on the marble floor, metronome counting down to something no one saw coming. I wasn't going for coffee, not even close. I reached the head of the table, not Ivy's side, the real head, the ceremonial head, where senior hosts sit in Japanese business etiquette. And for the first time that day, I spoke, not in English, not for Ivy. I addressed Mr. Takahashi in flawless, respectful Japanese. I didn't introduce myself. I didn't ask for permission. Opened with a reference to Shikata ga nai, the cultural acceptance of what must be endured. And then I offered an apology, not on behalf of the company, but as a steward of the relationship he had come to honor. His expression didn't change, but the room did. Dead air, frozen, and Ivy, bless her clueless heart, blinked like she'd just walked into a mid-season finale without knowing the plot. The fuse had been lit, and I wasn't carrying coffee. I was carrying fire. Kashi-sama, I began, head bowed just enough to signal humility without subservience. Please forgive the dissonance you've encountered this morning. The harmony we intended to offer has been disrupted by misplaced enthusiasm. The phrasing was deliberate, formal, respectful, edged like a blade wrapped in silk. I invoked Meiyo to Ishiki, the bond of honor and awareness. I reminded him of our shared meetings in Kyoto, of the shrine where he once told me, "Leader listens first, speaks last." I even quoted his father's business memoir, the one he gifted me years ago after I secured their logistics contract. His lips barely parted, but something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, memory, and something colder, disappointment. Behind me, Ivy was still standing, clicking her remote like a broken prop comic. "Amanda, what are you?" I ignored her. "Our company," I continued, still in Japanese, was built by a man who valued relationships over theatrics. You honored him with your presence today. And I, in turn, honor the trust you placed in us. Mr. Takahashi slowly placed his teacup down. The sound of ceramic touching wood was the only thing in the room that dared breathe. And then he stood. His entire delegation followed, like chess pieces obeying a silent command. He faced me directly, bowed deeper than before, and said, "Perfect English, we do not sign with servants. We sign with masters." His voice was calm, final, the deal is canceled. And just like that, the air cracked open. Ivy's mouth moved, but no sound came out. Her hands fluttered like she was trying to catch invisible excuses. "Wait, Mr. Takahashi, please. There's been a misunderstanding. This isn't, she doesn't." Mr. Takahashi didn't look at her. Not once. Instead, nodded toward me and said to his delegation in Japanese, "Gather our materials. We're done here." A junior associate began collecting the folders, careful and methodical. One of them bowed to me with quiet reverence before tucking away the agreement, the one I'd spent 3 years building, nurturing, safeguarding like a child. Ivy's stilettos clicked as she stumbled around the table. "Amanda, what did you just say to him?" "You don't have the authority to." I turned and walked back to my seat, slowly, with the kind of grace that only arrives when a burden is dropped and a truth finally speaks. I sat down. I didn't look at her. I didn't need to. Mr. Takahashi and his team exited without a single backward glance. And then silence. The kind of silence that swallows pride, devours ego, and leaves only the bones of consequence behind. Ivy stood in the middle of it, alone, red-faced, breath-hitching, like a child who just found out the glitter glue doesn't fix grown-up problems. And me? I folded my hands on the table, took a sip of the chrysanthemum tea she never brewed right, and waited, because the meeting was over. But the reckoning had just begun. The first message hit my inbox 26 minutes after the delegation walked out. Subject line, "Urgent Damage Control Sender. CFO, Gregory Marston." Kind of man who wears loafers with tassels and treats spreadsheets like sacred scrolls. He'd always been polite to me, not warm, not cold, just polite. That morning he looked anything but, "Amanda," he murmured, pulling me aside just outside the executive suite. "I need a minute. Maybe 2, off the record, of course." We stood next to a ficus plant and a vending machine. "Corporate Switzerland." "I need your version," he said quietly, eyes flicking toward the boardroom where Ivy was already spinning her web. "Timeline, facts, tone. What exactly did you say to Mr. Takahashi?" I handed him my notepad. He glanced down at the precise timestamps I'd scribbled, then back at me. You anticipated this, didn't you? I anticipated she'd do something embarrassing, I replied. Didn't think she'd cancel a legacy deal with a coffee order. He sighed. She's calling it sabotage, says you went rogue. I didn't laugh. I didn't flinch. I just tilted my head slightly. I attached 3 emails to the presentation deck last week, I said calmly, all of them flagging protocol issues. One of them titled, Do Not Mangle Honorific Introductions. Want me to resend? He didn't answer. He just nodded once and walked away reading my notes like they were a script for a hostage negotiation. By lunch, the investor chatter had reached boiling point. Half the messages were frantic. What happened with Takahashi? Did someone insult the delegation? Is Ivy okay? The other half were thinly veiled threats. This project had multi-market dependencies. Reconsidering allocations. We need clarity on leadership. The first whisper came from accounting. The Tokyo ledger was being scrubbed from the upcoming quarterly projection. Second came from procurement. The cross-Pacific contract binder had been quietly moved to an archive folder labeled TBD. And the third was louder. The board called an emergency meeting. Official subject, review of client impact, immediate priority, unofficial subject. What the hell just happened? Ivy arrived in a white blazer, lips drawn tight, hair in an aggressively tidy bun. She was trying to look composed, like a movie star playing the role of a corporate savior. I arrived with nothing but my notes and a printed copy of every email I'd sent her for the last 4 months. She opened the meeting with a forced chuckle. Obviously, today didn't go as expected. There was some confusion, defined confusion. The chair interrupted flatly. Ivy's eyes darted to me, then back to the room. Cultural misalignment, possibly miscommunication. Amanda took it upon herself too. I slid a paper across the table. Email dated April 18th. Use proper title order. Mr. Takahashi should be addressed with full honorific. Do not attempt phonetic approximation unless fluent. Silence. I slid another one. May 9th, slide 3 image of samurai cat is offensive. Please remove. Another. June 3rd, do not use Heikas unless culturally vetted. Sushi and synergy is not a theme. The chair raised an eyebrow. She told you all this. Ivy's smile cracked. She's exaggerating. I archived every email, I said calmly. I also CC'd strategy, legal, and international ops. And then I said nothing else. Let the silence do what it does best, slice. By the time the meeting ended, the board had requested a formal investigation into the loss of the Takahashi deal. The phrase executive misjudgment was used twice. Ivy's blazer seemed to grow tighter with each sentence. But the best part, last report summary had a new name added to the CC list. Martin Langford, founder, retired, father of Ivy Langford, and now watching everything from the outside in high definition. They'd looped Daddy in, and I didn't even have to lift a finger. The email came at 2:12 a.m. Timestamp Tokyo time. No greeting, no subject line. Just a single line of text. We will deal with you directly in the future. Please advise where to direct contracts. Was from Mr. Takahashi's personal account. No assistant copied, no legal counsel, no corporate signature fluff. Just plain, deliberate intent, the kind of message that didn't need emojis or bullet points to scream authority. I stared at it for a full minute. Then I quietly closed my laptop, got out of bed, and made a cup of tea I didn't drink. My hands were steady, but my heart wasn't. Not because I was nervous, because I knew what this meant. This wasn't just a second chance. This was a transfer of power. 2 hours later, I replied, "Thank you for your trust. I will handle all further communications personally. Documentation will follow shortly. Respectfully, Amanda Langford." By 8:00 a.m., I was back in the office. Not in my cubicle. Not in the global ops bullpen Ivy created to keep the serious departments away from her vibe. No, I was in a private conference room on the 27th, one with no name on the door, just a keycard lock and a view of the skyline. It was the board's territory. I hadn't been summoned, I'd been invited. Inside, Gregory, the CFO, nodded at me like we were old war buddies. Legal gave a polite smile. Even the head of risk, who once referred to my language skills as cute, offered me coffee like I was royalty. I took my seat, opened my notes, and waited. 5 minutes later, Ivy burst through the door like a weather system. Still in white, still overcompensating. She saw me and stopped short like someone had put a wolf in her petting zoo. "Why is she here?" she barked, aiming the question at no one in particular. "She's here because we asked her to be," said Chairman Whitaker, without looking up from his file. "But this is a board review," she protested. "She's not an executive." "Not yet," he replied. The silence after that wasn't empty, it was loaded. Ivy stood frozen, blinking like she'd walked into a play halfway through the second act and realized her name wasn't in the program. Miss Langford, Whitaker continued, eyes now on me, walk us through the breakdown, from your perspective. I clicked my pen once and began, not defensive, not apologetic, just facts. Timeline, documentation, cultural protocol ignored, repeated warnings filed and dismissed, stakeholder feedback, comparative case studies. Finally, the email from Mr. Takahashi himself, which I printed and placed at the center of the table like a verdict. No one interrupted, not once. When I finished, I closed my folder, sat back, and folded my hands. Ivy opened her mouth. This is outrageous. She went behind my back. She did her job. Whitaker cut in. Which is more than I can say for you. A ripple went through the room, barely visible, but seismic. I built this company with my father. Ivy snapped. I don't deserve this kind of. You didn't build anything, the head of strategy said softly. You inherited it. There's a difference. That one landed. She turned to me, eyes wide, mouth tightening like she was chewing glass. You think this is over? You think one email? I think the chairman of Takahashi International has made it clear who he trusts, I said evenly. And it's not someone who introduced him as Takoshi. A few stifled coughs. One actual snort. Ivy spun on her heel and stormed out. When the door clicked shut, the chairman leaned forward. We need someone to stabilize our international strategy. Clean house. Start fresh. You've been doing it without a title for years. Would you consider making it official? I didn't smile. But inside, something unclenched. Something old and quiet and tired finally exhaled. Depends, I said. Do I get to pick my own team? You'll have full discretion. And veto power. International affairs? Absolutely, I nodded once. Then yes. Respect, it turns out, isn't inherited, it's earned. And I had just cashed in 15 years' worth of it. The elevator doors slid open with a soft ding, and I stepped in alone, grateful for 30 seconds of silence before my next meeting with legal. I pressed floor 19, where compliance was waiting to finalize the Takahashi documents, now routed directly through me. Just before the doors shut, manicured hand shot through the gap. Ivy. She stepped in like a storm contained in silk, lipstick perfect, blazer freshly pressed, eyes rimmed red behind fury and concealer. She didn't press a button. Just stood there, watching me. The doors sealed shut. You think you're so perfect, she said, her voice just above a whisper, waltzing into the boardroom like you belong there. You've always waited for your moment, haven't you? Lurking. Quiet, calculating, I didn't respond. Not yet, you think one deal makes you the golden child? She hissed. Let me remind you, my father built this company from nothing. With his hands in his blood, I am this company. I turned to her slowly. Calm, unmoved, then act, I said, like someone worth inheriting it. She flinched, like the words slapped something deeper than skin. The elevator kept rising. We said nothing. I gave you room, she spat finally. I let you stay when you could have been replaced. Even promoted you, don't forget that. You gave me a title without authority, I replied, my voice low and even. A leash, not a ladder. She crossed her arms, shoulders tight, clenching like she was holding back tears or screams, maybe both. And now what? You think they'll hand it all to you? I shrugged slightly. I don't want all of it, just what I've earned. The rest is up to you. The doors opened on 19. I stepped out. She didn't follow. As I walked down the hallway, I passed a glass conference room where the marketing venture team was huddled, pale, whispering, clearly shaken. Their pivot to persona campaign had just lost 2 anchor sponsors. Word had at one of them cited concerns about executive credibility. Another requested a formal ethics review before resuming talks. The house of glitter Ivy built was starting to crack. I entered the compliance room. They greeted me with nods, documents ready, contracts revised per my specifications. After years of translating strategy into footnotes no one read, I was now drafting the blueprint. That afternoon, I received a short message from Chairman Whitaker. Drop by before you head out. We'd like to discuss EVP structure. No emoji, just authority. I walked into the boardroom as the sun was setting across the skyline. Inside, Whitaker and 2 senior members were already waiting. We won't waste your time, said, gesturing to a leather folder on the table. EVP of Global Strategy. Full oversight, no filter. You'd report directly to us. And Ivy? I asked. She's not part of this discussion, one of them said. Not anymore. I opened the folder. The contract was lean, elegant, ironclad. Take the night to think, Whitaker added, standing. But let's be clear, we're done with inherited power. We want earned leadership. And you've done the work. All we're doing now is formalizing it. I closed the folder without signing. Not yet. Power, real power, wasn't in the title. It was in being the one they couldn't ignore anymore, and I hadn't finished making them listen. I met with the board again the next morning, early, before the hallways buzzed with Ivy's perfume and nervous interns. The skyline was still streaked with fog when I walked into conference room A, contract folder under one arm, resolve under the other. We're already seated, Whitaker, CFO Marston, and two other senior members I'd only ever addressed through quarterly emails. Whitaker gestured to the seat at the head of the table. This time, I took it. No games, I said as I opened the folder. Here are my terms. The room didn't blink. They listened. First, I said, veto power on all international strategy deals, regardless of department origin. If it crosses a border, it crosses my desk. Marston nodded. Second, direct reporting line to the board. No filters, no executive summaries massaged by Ivy's PR team. Another nod. Third, I continued, full authority to assemble and manage my own team. I want 5 slots, and I'll be selecting each without interference. Fair, Whitaker replied. Fourth, I added, sliding a sheet across the table, this department will operate independently. No oversight from Ivy Langford, in title or in function. This time, there was a pause. Marston cleared his throat. That might be complicated. Only if you let it be, I said flatly. You saw what happened. Her pattern of negligence didn't begin last week, it just became impossible to ignore. I opened my bag and pulled out the sealed envelope. Compliance Report #87C, filed quietly by me 3 years ago, unopened until now. I slid it toward Marston. Eagle's copy had been activated automatically the moment the Takahashi deal collapsed. This one included direct documentation of Ivy's failures across 4 quarters, missed deadlines, misrepresented figures, unapproved branding statements made to international press. I didn't narrate it. I let the words speak for themselves. Whitaker skimmed the top pages, then exhaled. This would explain a lot. I never escalated, I said. I gave her space. Time, room to grow. She used it to build castles out of hashtags and ego. HR had been looped in at this point, 2 representatives blinking rapidly like they'd been dropped in the middle of coup. We have protocols, one muttered. Executive rights, reporting hierarchies, then adjust them, Whitaker interrupted. You've been adjusting them for Ivy for years. Silence. Then, you have your terms, Whitaker said, effective immediately. I nodded, quietly. I didn't smile, didn't gloat. Were no balloons, no backpats. Just the steady, clinical shift of power into hands that had already been doing the work all along. I signed the document. 15 years of thankless midnight emails, of being misintroduced, misused, mistaken for the intern, and now, authority that couldn't be stolen or spun. I left the room and returned to my new office, a glass-walled corner spaced 2 floors above Ivy's. I brought no decor, just a single framed calligraphy piece Mr. Takahashi had once given me. Shisei to chai, sincerity and wisdom. As I sat, the ping came in. One unread message from Ivy. Subject line, congratulations, upside down face, no body, no signature, just the emoji, passive-aggressive as a lemon in a paper cut. I clicked delete, because tomorrow the Japanese delegation was flying back in. And this time I'd be greeting them, not with coffee, but with a signed deal. Someone else wouldn't be invited to the table. The boardroom was filled with the kind of nervous energy that makes men straighten their ties twice, and HR reps sip water they don't need. Every chair was taken. Legal, compliance, investor relations, even a couple of faces I hadn't seen since the founder's retirement. Ivy sat 3 seats down from me, scrolling through her phone like she wasn't dying to know what was about to happen. Her white blazer was back, as if color could overwrite consequence. Chairman Whitaker cleared his throat. We've called this meeting, he began, to formally address the future of our international division and whether we have the leadership necessary to sustain strategic relationships. A knock on the door interrupted him. It opened slowly. Mr. Kento Takahashi stepped inside. No delegation. No assistant. Just him, impeccably dressed, unshakably poised, and carrying a single black folder. Ivy's face dropped like a phone off a balcony. Takahashi bowed to the room, low and deliberate, then walked past every executive, every whispering board member, and stopped directly in front of me. Amanda-san, he said with a nod. He opened the folder and laid a thick stack of signed pages in front of me. The Takahashi contract, not the old one, a new one, with better terms. Revised valuation, $200 million. More than we'd ever hoped for. He tapped the bottom corner where his signature sat clean and deliberate. You honored the relationship, he said quietly. We honor you. My throat tightened, but I nodded. Arigato gozaimasu, I replied, then turned to the board. I believe this answers the question about future leadership. Murmurs rose, some stunned, some not. And then I felt her stare. I turned to Ivy, whose face was caught in a silent scream. Her soul was trying to call security but forgot the number. You were right, Ivy, I said gently. This isn't personal, it's business. She opened her mouth. But before she could speak, Mr. Takahashi said one final sentence. Calm, crisp, directed at her. I didn't flinch. I translated aloud for the room to hear. He said, a true leader knows when to listen. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was absolute. Ivy stood, slowly, clutching her tablet like it was a lifeboat. She didn't say a word, not to me, not to the board, not to the man who just walked in and rewrote the future of the company in 10 seconds flat. She left the room. The door closed behind her, and no one got up to follow. Mr. Takahashi took his seat beside me without invitation, because he didn't need one. The board turned toward me, every head now calibrated to where the true voice sat. I leaned back, not smug, not triumphant, just still. Because in the end, it didn't take shouting. It didn't take revenge. It took remembering who I was before they told me to fetch the coffee. And sitting at the head of the table with the respect I had earned the hard way was more than enough. Big thanks, you legends of the old office days. Subscribe to keep the switch-flicking chaos alive. Your ex-boss is shaking in their loafers.